go around the world now and people want to talk to you about Birmingham bands like Black Sabbath.
The opening few bars on that Black Sabbath record has got to be the best opening track of all time, and that is still monstrous. The album's monstrous, but that has got to be the best debut ever.
We did a recording which was really a facsimile of the first album. It was all the songs from the first album, and I took it to London to get a record deal. EMI Harvest turned me down straight away. I got 14 straight turn downs based on my demo, and so we got some money together from David Platts to Six Music. He lent us £500. We went into a 8-track machine, or 4-track maybe, and with Roger Bain we recorded the same songs again. Took those to the same companies, including EMI, CBS, everybody, 14 again, and got 14 straight turndowns on the actual album. On the actual album that eventually became a multi-million seller album called Black Sabbath. The actual music was turned down. Not a demo of it, the actual recordings that sold was turned down. Olaf Wiper had been headhunted from CBS, where he'd heard it, to join Phonogram and set up their new Vertigo label. He put out the first 3 albums, VOs 1, 2 and 3, and the second wave of 3 were ready to go. One of them fell out. Whoever was delivering the master didn't deliver the master on time. Out of Phonogram and said, "Listen, I've been thinking about that band you brought in. What are they called? I think we'll have a go on that." I said, "Great," so relieved. "And I'll come down tomorrow morning. Let's get the contract done." "No, you don't need to come down. I'll send you the contract." That was really weird. I said, "But Olaf, you only heard half of one track and at the beginning of another one. Don't you want to hear it all again?" And, No, I'll set the contract." Well, later I found out he was desperate for a master. We sent to Hamburg to play the Star Club. They did 3 months there. Midweeks they used to play 6:45s a night. The weekends they play 8:45s a night. 8 at night till 4 in the morning. 45 on, 15 off.
Seeing Black Sabbath made me realise I didn't have to be part of the middle class female upbringing I was moulded into.
When Master Reality come out and they played the Town Hall, and it was the first gig I ever went to, and I remember a load of us went from school. They did 2 nights, Monday and a Tuesday, and I went on the Tuesday, and the first gig I ever went to, I blagged it in with the tour manager. It was the first brilliant, we actually got in for free, and it was quite funny because I saw it was fantastic, and those are, from that gig is where the pictures are in the middle of Volume 4. So it's great because I'm saying, right, I'm in that audience, so it's brilliant.
They were so loud. I just remember standing there like, they were unbelievably loud. I'd never heard anything like it. And I went on my own and I just stood there in the middle of the room on my own. And it was this traditional thing, and I don't know if it happens in every city, but there was only about 300 people in the room, and they were all round the outsides of the room. You know, no one was in the centre, apart from the few headbangers with their heads in the speakers. So I was in the centre dancing away, 12 years old, with all these kind of very strange long-haired people coming up to me offering me pills. And I just stayed. I stayed for the whole concert, and I thought, this is fantastic.
Ozzy was always riveting on stage, even when he didn't really know too much about what he was doing. He was always riveting, very, very committed. And I think that's the first thing that attracted me. Also, they were nice blokes. I got on well with them.
They were ordinary blokes. There was no rich mummies and daddies in the background who could do all the stuff and buy them the gear. They actually did do it, absolutely from scratch. And they invented the whole thing, which is fantastic.
Those all big doom-laden riffs, like Tony Iommi did, like with Sabbath.
They were the first to do it, so that's you've got to take your hat off to people that come up with the ideas first, because then you see lots of bands copy those people, but it's easy to copy, but it's very hard to come up with something original.
Black Sabbath was the first metal band with the upside-down crosses and the way they looked and the big riff songs they did and the lyrics and stuff, Prior to that, they were another one of these come out of the blues stuff, with Ozzy on his harmonica and stuff like that in a band called Earth. But to me, they were the first for everybody to sort of, if you wanted to follow a band in the metal sort of form, follow them. That's the one to follow.
I didn't know I was seeing Ozzy Osbourne. I didn't know I was seeing, legendary people who are going to like take over the world. So it was extraordinary.
Geezer Butler was just the ultimate live bass player at the time. He got this Persian bass on the go and all. And I used to wear a tailcoat, and he's got this check tailcoat. It was just superb. So they were, and I still think of all that stuff, they are easily the biggest and the best.
To see Black Sabbath and to see the people there was a huge liberating experience.
When the Sabbath came back from playing a ridiculous playing house in Hamburg, they came back the tightest band you've ever heard in your life. But they would be. I mean, you either die or get good in those situations. So when the record was released, the band had already created a really good platform. Olaf Weiber phoned me up and said, "You did a great job on the album." I said, how did you do that? Well done. I said, "Yes, great, isn't it? But I told you, I knew it'd be big." He said, "No, but how did you get the sales?" He still didn't understand that the record sold because the band were hot. He thought that someone had paid, as people were. I mean, those days people used to manipulate the charts all the time. We never could. Although I never had the choice. I never had the money to do it if we'd wanted to. But the big companies used to manipulate the charts terribly. And he just assumed I found a cool way to manipulate the charts. He still couldn't believe that the band were hot.
And the wind began to moan. It must have been a sign for me.
I lost them on, let's just say they would leave me on Saturday morning. That week, the second single was at number 2 on the singles chart. The first album was back on the album chart at number 16. And the Paranoid album was number 1 on the album chart. That was when I lost them. So we did okay, yeah? I know, I've heard lots of stories about it, and I know bits of things for certain, but Ozzy was the reluctant one to leave.
Metal did go right over my head, I'm afraid, because I was coming from the Beach Boys scene, I was coming from folk music. I just did not get metal at all. And to my shame, a few months ago, I was sat in a pub in Digbeth with a couple of friends, and a track was on the jukebox, and we thought, what's that? This is good. Who is it? This is good bass playing. It's good trumpet. Who is this? So I gave up and had to go to the jukebox. It was Black Sabbath from their first album. So I'm sorry, but I've just started getting into Sabbath now.
Black Sabbath are just so huge around the world still. They're absolutely huge.
Sabbath was a great band.
They were the ultimate, really.
I did have some influences from people who culturally came from Birmingham, and I always felt, Robert Plant, Led Zeppelin, had a Birmingham link.
And I remember seeing the early gigs in Birmingham at the Carlton, and Jim would play such inventive guitar playing without repeating himself. Really was ahead of. He was older, but he was ahead of all kinds of my age group, and of course John Paul Jones. These people, they were all quite seasoned and elder statesmen, really.
Led Zeppelin and Robert Plant and those guys who came out of Birmingham, they were phenomenal musicians. I thought they wrote just incredible stuff, which lasts right up until today.
If you think about the bands, and especially we're talking about the big rock bands of the late 60s and the early 70s, what characterises them to me now is their soulfulness.
They had that blues, and Plant, he was well into blues. He loves the blues, so he had this nice way of putting the vocals across, and his little flamenco dancing, and he was great. He was a great frontman. He looks brilliant as well. I hate him. No, he's a great guy. He was a big influence for a lot of singers, out there.
Think about Robert Plant's affinity with R&B. And you've got some extraordinarily punchy, emotive stuff going on with those guys right there.
A lot of people don't class Zeppelin as heavy metal, but they did have a good metal side to them when they wanted to be. But they seem to come out like a lot of bands with the blues stuff in the 60s. You had the big beat boom, you had the blues boom, and everybody was coming out like Cream. And you had that blues influence still Led Zeppelin especially.
When Jimmy put it all sort of together, had the know-how and also the knowledge, because he came out of the Yardbirds, he tasted America, he good business acumen, also very very strong guitarist and producer. We were playing at the Boston Glidodrome, which was a club, and Terry Reid was on, and he just recommended Robert to Jimmy. A very, very mean guy, Page, apparently, when Rob went down with these demos. I think he heard him sing in Wolverhampton with a kind of sort of makeshift band or something. He liked him, of course, and said, come on down, and Page was living on a boat at the time. Robert went down. I'm not sure if John went with him, but Robert came back and said, he's a mean bastard. He charged us $2 bob or something for baked beans on toast. But they hit it off because Jim had a great record collection, and he liked, of course, Robert. Robert played him our kind of demos, and the nice little bit about those, harping back to those demos on the Adriatic Sea View, the first line of my guitar solo, Page stole and put that lick on the first Zepp album, which I'm so proud of, because I was a nameless nobody really, and he always copped a guitar lick off me from the demos and used it.
All of the skills that they had in terms of musicianship, singing, songwriting, arrangements, the excitement of the band, they were definitely a group of musicians that I really admired.
The music and how it all kind of sort of came together, really Band of Joy spawned a lot of that, because a lot of the songs that we were doing, they then took into Led Zeppelin and kind of bastardized into a much better kind of arrangements, heavier and whatever, and even the songs like How Many More Years, which were Wolf, they changed to How Many More Times, You Need Love, all this sort of stuff, that became a whole lot of love. But it doesn't matter about taking that stuff. I mean, they made it their own, so fantastic. People will say, oh yeah, well, they magpied this and that in the early days. Yeah, but it was just, we all did. So Robert pulled all this sort of together, and we spawned Band of Joy, which then went on to spawn Led Zepp. Yeah, so you had Bonham on drums, who would actually set his kit up at the front of the stage. You knew he was going to be a star, and hog all the limelight, even make Robert and I sort of get behind him a little bit. So he'd have the drum kit, which was, in those days, I mean, he had his, it was sounded exactly how he sounded in Zepp. He had that Ludwig drum kit, and we'd have arguments. We'd always have these things like, well, when it comes to my solo, just give me a nice kind of sort of steady beat without any kind of sort of fills, so I can kind of sort of just settle on it. And of course, when it came to solos, he'd still be kind of playing the hell out of the kits. It's a pity with the Band of Joy recordings, because there was probably only a couple of mics set up in the studio, and although they're great and raw, and sound, I think, very, very strong, bass drums and things like that have got kind of recorded for whatever reason. Steve Gibbons, about a couple of years back at Robert's 60th, we were talking, and he was saying, God, I can remember your first band. I was in the Uglies, and we used to hate it if we'd actually sort of had to support you, or you had to support us, because you'd just blow us all off.